Django 2.0, and more specifically from the blog API version of Try Django 1.9. Now, a big part of the motivation to do this is, one, to show you that it's not that hard to do, give you the confidence to just try it on your own projects, and then number two, to remind you that older versions of Django are still Django. They're still very, very much valid. There are some changes that you may have to make, and maybe some third-party packages no longer work anymore, but older versions of Django absolutely are still Django, and upgrading it is not always that complicated. Now, I've done it quite a bit, so I know how to do this pretty quickly, and that's why it's going to only take me, maybe 20 to 30 minutes, where it might take you an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. It's hard to say exactly. But another thing that I want to drill home is that every version of Django is still mostly Django. Like, they haven't changed so much that it just doesn't work anymore. And especially if you watch a newer version of Django. So if you're learning from, like, let's say Django 1.5, and then you watch Try Django 1.11, you'll have an idea of how the changes are affecting the older version. So those are a couple of things that I just wanted to mention. The other things is, of course, the Try Django series is on YouTube. It's also on our website. And then we're going to be working off the code on GitHub. And then if you need additional questions answered live, join cfe.com/live and join cfe.com/Slack will help those out. Of course, this is for live streaming, and Slack is for the Slack channel that we have. It's a newer thing, so check both of those things out. And then finally, we have a blog post that talks about Django 2.0 and the few key versions there. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into GitHub, where we're going to be working off of our project. So this is the blog API with Django REST Framework. This actually came from Try Django 1.9 and advancing the blog. That's what we're going to be working off of. I'm fairly confident that things are going to break, because third-party packages tend to do that if they're not maintained. And since this project is over 2 years old, that's probably what's going to happen. So that might mean that I have to just sort of tell you about what happened there and how we might address it in the future. Because, like, if it's a third-party package that's breaking, then maybe I don't do the upgrade to 2.0. Maybe I just do the upgrade to 1.11, the LTS, which is, of course, what I always recommend anyway. So after you go through this video, and if the 2.2 LTS is out, go and try and upgrade to the 2.2. Just try it out, see what happens. And of course, there's always some release notes on how this is done and what things have changed in the previous version to the new version. It's similar to, like, our blog post of, like, a few key features here. It's not perfectly like that, but it is similar. And then finally, the actual video series that we're going to be working off of is the Try Django series. So this one looks like it's just Try Django 1.9, but if I actually scroll down a little bit, I see that I've just created the blog with Try Django 1.9, which has 3 different individual series themselves. So it's actually a pretty long and comprehensive series right there that I would argue is still relevant, with the exception of maybe Bootstrap version 3. That's quite a bit different than Bootstrap 4, but all of the Django related stuff is pretty much identical. A lot of the jQuery stuff is also pretty much identical. So just keep that in mind when we're going about doing this, but obviously I'm doing the very last one, which is blog API with the Django REST Framework, and that code is right here. So now let's jump into the actual code process. Now I'm in a folder for Try Django 1.9, which is an empty folder inside of my dev directory, and I'm going to go ahead and clone this repo. So git clone that repo, period at the end, so it clones into this particular folder. It might take a minute to do this. Depends on how fast your internet speed is. Obviously, another way you can do it is just downloading the zip file and then bringing it in where you need to, and you'll have roughly something like this. Okay, so now that I've got this, I'm going to go ahead and create a virtual environment. So virtual env period. Now, my virtual environment, I only have Python 3.6 on my system here, so I didn't have to declare anything more. But using Django 2.0, you have to use Python 3.5 and above. So Python 2 is no longer supported in Django. Yeah, so some of you might be bummed about it. At one point, I would have been bummed about it. I'm not anymore. Python 3.6 is better than 2.7, and it's the future. And honestly, when Python 4 comes out, are people still going to be using Python 2 or Python 3? I mean, hopefully not. Hopefully everyone adopts the newest version when it's time, right? So just like it's time to adopt maybe maybe version Django of 1.11, maybe it's time to do that. Maybe it's not. We'll see. Okay, so anyways, I'm going to have this virtual environment going, and I'm also going to open up the actual project itself inside of Sublime Text. So I'm just going to open up a Finder window, or a file window rather, excuse me. So used to using a Mac. Okay, so try Django 1.10, Sublime project, and here it is. Oh, no, we don't want Sublime. We just did 1.10. All right, I just recorded that, excuse me. Okay, so we want try Django 1.9, and it's the blog API project. So I'm going to go ahead and open that one up. And here we go. So I've got all of the code that's necessary. So while the virtual environment stuff is working, well, it looks like it's done. But in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and install these things. While these install, I'm going to have to probably just start replacing things in my code. So pip install -r requirements.txt. I'll hit enter. In theory, there we go. There it goes. Okay, cool. So that's installing. While that installs, I'm going to go ahead and start looking at my main code here. So in blog, inside of URLs, there's already a bunch of things in here that I know I need to change. And I just know this from doing this upgrade a few times, and also knowing this Django version 2.0, a few key features. This blog post will help you a lot there as well. So first and foremost, this import is definitely incorrect. So we're going to go ahead and do from django.urls import either repath or path. So repath is for our regular expression path, which actually down here we actually don't need. There's nowhere in any of these that we actually need for regular expressions. So I personally like using regular expressions, and that's all you would do if you want to switch it over to regular expressions. If you wanted to make it not in regular expressions and just more simple, we just change it to path, and we just put it in as a string, the string that we would want. So in my case, right here, it would be admin, just like that. And that's the new way of doing it. That's in Django 2.0. Django version 1.11 doesn't have this. Django 2.0, and I believe in the future is going to have repath and regular path. This kind of simplifies things for us a little bit. Yeah, so you can take it as you want on however you want to go about doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and convert these into that. Okay, now that conversion is done, I'm going to go ahead and do it in other URL places. So in comments.urls, same thing. I need to do the exact same thing. And here I actually have regular expressions, so I'm going to keep it as that. So django.urls import repath and get rid of the other URL portion. Okay, great. And then the next thing is, I'm going to probably just go ahead and copy this. The next one is posts. And here, repath, changing all the URLs. Now you don't, again, you can use just path for some of these. Slug, I think you could even do it there. I'm not going to really cover that portion because again, it's about speeding up the upgrading process here. I did notice that I have accounts app. I don't seem to have URLs in here, but I might in my API, and I do. So same thing. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, go into here, paste this, and there we go. Next thing is the comments API. I have URLs there as well. So let's go ahead and copy this. A lot of redundant stuff here. I realize that. Okay, next thing, posts API, same deal. Okay, and I think that's it. I think I got all of the URLs completed. So the next thing I know that I have to do is going into my settings, or sorry, the main configuration URLs, I have to change how namespaces work. That's just the nature of these things. It's actually fairly easy to do. The first one I'm going to do is accounts. So the accounts API stuff. Where's that one? That's right here. all I'm going to do here is cut out this namespace portion and go back into my URLs for that API itself, paste in that namespace, and instead of calling it namespace, we call it app_name, and that's it. So it's going to work the same way. It functions the same way, but it's just set up differently. The next one is comments. So let's go ahead and grab the comments URLs one. So cut that out. URLs and comments. Okay. App name. Very good. URLs. Next one would be posts. And post URLs. Same thing. App name. Back into the main configuration URLs. Comments API. Getting really close to getting this one done. So comments API URLs. Paste it. App name. So much fun. Okay, last one. This should cover URLs. This should actually finish our URLs altogether. So from here on out now, what you will see is the namespace or the app name and then the URL name. And that actually makes things a little bit easier because now you can change them both in the same place and not have to jump, to the configuration URLs. And this just cleans up our main configuration URLs as well, which is really nice. Okay, so now that I've got that saved, let's actually jump back into my virtual environment. I see that I have something like Pillow is not actually installing on my system. So I'm going to go ahead and try update pip install Pillow itself. Looks like it was installed, so maybe it's something else that gave me an error. But I'm going to go ahead and do pip freeze and see what actually was installed. There's a lot of things installed. Oh, these are on my system. I didn't activate my system or my virtual environment. Hopefully you guys caught that. Scripts activate. If you're on Windows, or sorry, if you're on Linux or Mac, you do source bin /activate. Okay, so again, I want to install those requirements. And this will install, the older version of Django, as well as all the things that are related to that. So while that happens, I'm going to do another thing in here that I know is going to have to happen. So I'm going to go to find in files, which is Control-Shift-F or Command-Shift-F if you are on Mac. So we want to look for is authenticated as a method. And of course, I'm going to use my current project. So try Django 1.9 and the SRC folder, hit select folder. So we want to look for is authenticated and we'll go to find it. And we have 62 files for this total, but it's not 62 things. It's only 3. That's nice. So I just get rid of that parentheses at the end. This is how it's done now. You do it in both places. Let's see. There's the other one. Okay. These print statements probably can go away altogether, but I'm not really upgrading or doing anything to the project other than getting it ready for Django 2.0. Okay. So there we go. So all my is authenticated stuff is done. Now let's go to my reference here, Django version 2.0, few key features. We've done that one. Oh, we haven't changed reverse yet. So let's go ahead and do a quick search for reverse. We've got a couple in here. So instead of it being from core URL resolvers, all it is from is .urls. A nice simple import change and .urls. And there we go. Now all of my reversed methods are complete. Okay. In my project, it looks like I have a pillow install error again. So pip install pillow. And then I'm now going to have to manually go through each one because I think what's happening is an older version of Pillow is causing a problem with my requirements. Luckily, I don't have that many requirements, so that's nice. And then pip install, we will do install Django equals to, well, actually, let's go ahead and do Django. I'm going to show you another way to do it. So Django Crispy Forms. Oops, accidentally canceled that one out. Well, Django, crispy forms, and Django, those things I might need to change. So Django REST framework, and then we'll just do -- upgrade. So this will give me the latest version of all of these. Now, you would probably want to actually declare which version you're using, because if you're watching this in a year from now, Django 2.0 is not something you'd want to do. You'd want to do 2.1. So you'd want to declare that specifically, which I'll show you how to do in just a moment if you don't already know how to do it. So it found Django 1.9. It's removing that. It's removing this version. So to change it to the specific version, it's just install Django == to 2.0.4. That's the one we're using. So that's probably what you'll end up wanting to do in the future. Just keep that in mind. Instead of what I did, the reason I did what I did is just to make things more simple, to install a few of the packages I know that need to install. I'm going to let this finish installing. Okay, finished installing, and then I want to do pip install Django REST framework -jot -- upgrade. You know, in my experience, the third-party packages, when they are upgraded, they typically, when you do -- upgrade, it will typically still support the more recent version. So like if Django 2.2 is out, I believe Django REST framework jot would probably support that still. Maybe not, but you know, it's definitely possible. So the other things that I need to install are, you know, the markdown ones. I'm a little worried about these working. I don't know if they will. I've heard there are potentially some security issues with these. That's something else that I haven't had a chance to look into. So if you find out about it, please let us know in the comments below. And then pip install page down -- upgrade. Okay, looks like that's working okay. And then pyjot. I think that one's probably already installed. pyjot -- upgrade. And it is. Okay, cool. So now, going back into our src folder, we're going to go ahead and Python manage.py, make migrations. And of course, it gives me this positional argument error. So by default, with every model in the past, if you ever had a foreign key, so I'm just going to go through them, models.py, if you ever have a foreign key or a one-to-one field, in the past it had something like on delete already there. Notice I actually do have one on this one, and that's probably because the documentation declared that specifically back then. So I'm going to go ahead and add this into my new one, right? So my user model now has that method of on delete, and then I'm just going to tab these over for clarity purposes. And the next thing would be the parent, this part right here. I probably will set this to being set null. Okay, so if the user is deleted, basically, so if that user model is deleted, then it deletes the comment that they made or the comments that they made. But if the parent item is deleted, then it doesn't. It just sets it to null. Okay, cool. So that's comments. We might need to see somewhere else. So in models.py of posts, we've got another user model here. So again, on delete, models.cascade. Same thing. Actually, in this case, with a post, if a user is deleted, I might want to keep that post. So I'm going to say null = true. And then just, instead of cascade, set null. So cascade was the default. I mean, if you ever deleted anything in the Django admin, you would have seen that it says, like, if you deleted something with a foreign key relationship, it would have said, like, oh, do you want to delete these items as well? That's what that is doing. And now setting it to null, it won't do that. Okay, so I think I've got all of the foreign keys done. Obviously, a way to check that is to run make migrations again. And what do you know? It worked. So Python manage.py, migrate. There we go. I see that I have some errors with my URL patterns. I'm not surprised there. So let's go ahead and take a look. URL patterns for, well, let's see. URL pattern API auth token. This is API auth token. So let's go into my main URL configurations. This right there. We want to get rid of those carets. That's from obviously the regular expression. So we save it, run migrate again just to see. Okay, so no errors this time. And python manage.py, run server. And it doesn't seem like we're getting any errors there. So let's go into the live project. Refresh this one. I've got no attribute user. Okay, so this is probably a problem with my login method. Let's just go ahead and... Okay, so that's just an issue with my code in general, which I'm going to fix for the purposes of this. So no attribute user. Well, actually, I don't think it's that code. Let's look inside of our blog, and this is it. Middleware classes is no longer middleware classes, but rather middleware. That hopefully solves that issue. We refresh in here, and it looks like it's not working still. So let's take a look. I might need to refresh my settings file and say blog application cannot be loaded, error loading import module. So what I'm thinking here is there's something wrong with my middleware. There's a really good chance that these are actually not set up correctly. So let's go ahead and take a look at a project that has correct middleware on our GitHub. So inside of Coding Entrepreneurs, try Django 2.0. That's coming still. That actually doesn't have our settings here. So let's try a Django 1.11 project with try Django 1.11. I would imagine that those might actually work just fine. If I remember correctly, the upgrading process from try Django 1.11 to Django 2.0 was fine with the settings. So I'm going to come in here and just grab the middleware that's in here. Of course, I could absolutely go to the documentation and see what that middleware is. So get rid of that, paste this in here, save it, because these imports, it looks like they've changed. So let's try it again. Run server, it looks like it's working. And I refresh in here. What do you know? It's working. Okay, cool. So I can go to my blog post. I can see all this stuff. I can probably run everything else. I'm actually not going to test all that. I'm going to leave that to you. But one thing I do want to see is a URL for, like, let's say our blog API URLs. So let's just double check those for the main configuration. We got URLs here, API posts, and we go / API posts. And cool. So that's working as well. Is the markdown stuff working? Is the admin working? You know, these are a lot of questions that I'm just going to leave for you guys to check out. The main thing here was to make sure that all of the other software was actually working. And of course, now that it is, there's one last thing I want to do, which you may have seen me do before, maybe not. I'm just going to go ahead and go pip freeze to my requirements.txt. So I know what requirements are now in this new version of try Django 1.9. Here are those new requirements. So if you're watching this and there were some issues with any of these versions, this is the version that you're going to want to use to make sure that this portion at least is working. But we've now updated it, and we did it in a little bit over 20 minutes. Now, I just finished upgrading try Django 1.10 to 2.0, and that also took about 20 minutes. So it actually doesn't take that long to upgrade. Now, of course, you might be like, well, there could be problems with the package code that I have. And there most likely will be, depending on what version you're coming from. And also the settings file. Like, what if I didn't know that was the problem with my settings file? Like, what if I'm coming from Django 1.5 and I'm trying to upgrade to Django 2.0? That's when, of course, you use the Django documentation as a good example, or you go ahead and do Django-admin start project, assuming all the new code is installed. We'll just call this CFE home. You hit enter, and then you go in This is what I would have done if I couldn't get those middleware settings to work. I go into my settings, everything with the exception of installed apps, or maybe including the default installed apps, I would literally copy and paste over and go line by line if I had to make sure that those settings were correct. And also URLs, right? So it has all the URLs that I needed. I would also check to make sure that those things are correct as well. And then if it's third-party package problems, we can actually look at those packages inside of our site packages here. So lib site packages, and here are all of those site packages. So let's say, for instance, Django Markdown 2 is not working correctly. So not the info version. We would want to get the actual code version. Let's see here. It's probably Markdown. There it is, Markdown do. So here it is, right? So here's the actual code for it. So what that means is you could come through in here, and let's say, for instance, there was something with the tags. You could literally copy this. You don't want to edit these things in here. You could copy this and bring it in as a template tag on one of your apps. I'll just show you that in action because I just mentioned it. I'm going to just go ahead and say open containing folder. And let's also open our main project folder too. So notice where I am. I've got site packages, Markdown Duo, Markdown Duo, something like that. Anyways, so template tags. If I wanted to get rid of Markdown Duo, I picked a funny one to do. I am not great at pronouncing French, obviously. So I would go into an app, right? So it's a template tag. So I know that that can live in an app, and I actually already have one inside of posts. So I can quite literally copy this, paste it in here, and there you go. So it's now inside of my project, so I can edit that version and then just completely remove the other one. This is one of those things that you would do to get rid of the potential problems that you might have for Markdown. Okay, so obviously there's a Markdown or any third-party package. Obviously there's some other imports that we'd have to take into consideration. So obviously you'd go back in, you would go for the configuration, you'd grab whatever this settings file is or what's in it. Here's what's in it. Not a whole lot there. And you would probably replace it with that. And then, you know, I don't know if there's a whole lot other things that you might actually need to do. But it is important to see that, yeah, you wouldn't actually edit the site packages because then when you go live with this older version, there's going to be problems because your site packages won't be correct with your requirements file. Doing it this method ensures that older packages, you can upgrade them yourself, one, and then you can also ensure that your project going live has that upgraded version. The last and final thing to think about here is if you do make upgrades and you actually make it into Django 2.0, go to that third-party package, go to it on GitHub, and submit a you want to submit an issue or even a pull request with the solved problem that you did, that you're accounting for. That's what I would say. And this actually seems to kind of already do it. This I believe this is probably related to Django versions right here, as we see here. Okay, I'm not going to keep that in this code. I just wanted to show you about it, and that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you want to see me upgrading other projects, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. And if you subscribe and hit that little bell icon, you'll get notified of new videos, of course, but also when we go live or when we schedule live